Hey Scott, how's it going?
Good, good. I'm glad to be here, Mike. Good to see you.
See you too. Hey, I appreciate you taking the time to come on to the podcast. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people interested in what you have to say because of your background and what you've gone through with all your kids and still going through with your youngest kid, Cade. I think everyone's going to really enjoy hearing what you have to say. So we're going to jump right into the questions. So first question I have for you is, you've had three kids that have played, are playing, or will play next year in Division One athletics. What do you feel is the biggest reason for their success?
Besides their mother, there's a lot of things. I talk about this a lot with folks. Does success in this realm come from nature or nurture? And I think it's both. I think you're born with some of it. You get your DNA and you are what you are a little bit, but I think a lot of it then becomes what the way you're raised, the what's instilled in you. I think with each one of my children, we've been able to instill confidence in what they're able to do, and that's helped carry them a long ways. And so from my standpoint, I don't know that there's an easy answer or a right answer, but I think instilling confidence in people or your children, being able to let them know that they can do whatever they put their mind to. But then I also think, going back to stealing some of your verbiage, you have to know where your point A is, and you have to know what your point B is, and you have to fill those gaps. You got to say, okay, here's where I'm at, here's what I'm going to do to work to get there, and then put a plan together and run at it. So all three of them have done that so far, and number four is on his way.
Well, so those are really. I totally agree. I've had conversations with you and a few other people about, whether it's genetics or whether it's both or whether it's, the environment, and it definitely feels like it's both. And but there's an art, and I think you figured it out with Heather, of how to really nurture your kids and install a sense of confidence in them. But as a parent, coming from the parent side, what do you feel like was your greatest challenge in helping your kids to succeed? And then maybe what were some of the solutions you came up with?
Well, I think it kind of ebbs and flows, and it ebbs and flows with each of them differently. I know with Nate being the oldest, he kind of got he got the blessing of my youth, but the curse of my youth in the same breath, if that makes any sense. I didn't know what I didn't know. I thought maybe yelling and screaming or pushing harder or some of those kinds of things sometimes were more motivating. And so Nate maybe got a little bit more of the brashness or the harshness of me, pushing him, where Cade gets a little more of my wisdom and a little more of, hey, I don't need to do that the way I did with Nate. So, I think with each of them, the instilling of confidence is being able to give them opportunities to be successful in many different things, right? It doesn't necessarily have to just be baseball or softball. It's got to be, hey, you mowed the lawn great, you did the dishes great, your homework was great, great grades, whatever it is, the things that you do, you have to celebrate those wins as often as you can. And then also, it's not, especially in the world we live in today, you have to be able to have some expectations. You have to be able to say, I need your best effort here. I need your work. People are counting or depending on you, and so that expectation has to be healthy. But there also has to be that piece in there that says, hey, look, you got to dig in. You got to fight. You have to work. There's going to be some sweat on the edge of your brow when you're done with this, and that's a good thing. That's how we're going to measure your success, not necessarily wins or losses.
Excellent. Well, let's take a little more specific. Let's look at maybe each your two oldest boys. So that's Nate, who last year was drafted by the Rays, and then Jake, who is playing for Utah Tech Division One baseball. Maybe we kind of use those as the next with these next two questions. So first, with Nate, did Nate play any additional sports when he was growing up? When did he go exclusively baseball? If you can maybe kind of attune to his athletic development over time.
So all grown up, boys played. We can lump them all together because they all did the same exact thing. They all played every sport they could. So, we believe in just making sure that everybody has an opportunity to get exposure to everything. So they played everything from soccer, little league football, basketball. In high school, Nate and Jake specifically played football, baseball, and basketball. As they developed into more of a pitcher, baseball's recruited heavily in the fall. That takes some time away from football. And so they gravitated away from football and focused mainly on basketball and also on baseball. Um, Largely due to the fact that when Nate went to the Junior Fall Classic, he got identified by the Atlanta Braves, had a cross checker here in town, looking at him and visiting with him. And one of the questions that he asked Nate was what he did in the off season for uh, speed and agility training. And both of us kind of looked at him. He looked at me and like, well, we don't really do anything. And he goes, well, what does he do in the winter time? And I said, well, he plays basketball at the high school basketball team. He says, perfect. That's he needs to be able to get away from the ball, he needs to get away from throwing, and needs to be able to do something that will develop those other, quick twitch muscles and other skill sets. So that was one thing that we kind of, as we learned along the way. And then we've just kind of mimicked that with Kate. Kate's played volleyball, she's played basketball, and she's played softball. And she's played all three of them all through high school up until this last year, where basketball had to take a little second place because she had some tournaments and some other things that were kind of dictated by school to be able to do those things. But as of right now, Cade does everything. So we just try to keep him as rounded as he can and give him a chance to develop those, develop his little body as good as he can.
Awesome. Yeah, that's definitely a conversation I typically have with a lot of our clients here at Athletic Potential. Is I usually ask them, how many sports they're currently playing, or are they only one sport, and depending on age, a lot of times their athletic development really just means they need to go play a different sport or try something new, even if that's just trying something new on a recreational standpoint, or even just playing pickup. I mean, I told a kid he needed to go play pickup rollerblade hockey the other day because he really loves to rollerblade and flick things around with a stick. And I said, well, it sounds like you need to go get a bunch of buddies together and do it. And he actually told me the other day he actually went out and did it. So I was a little surprised.
That's cool.
So
you and I visit about this all the time, and we talk about this a lot. But I think it's vitally important, especially for a throwing motion or someone like Kate that plays volleyball and then tries to use softball. You use that one side of your body a lot. You have to do something to develop that other side. We work with you a lot where you take measurements and help, develop a plan, but there's got to be some natural things that they do as well that just be able to help them get both sides of their body complete. Jake's the same way. He played football, baseball, and basketball all through high school, and both of them played until they were about, I think Jake stopped when he was a sophomore and Nate stopped when he was a junior. So, those other sports, they matter. They help. That was one blessing of being in a small community or a small high school, a 4A Utah high school, is they needed every athlete they could to play every sport that they could. So that was a sort of a blessing, for us and my children, was that they were able to do all of those things.
awesome. So let's concentrate a little bit more on Cade, because we seem to have a lot of people asking these questions and those they're in the age ranges of anywhere from like 12 to 16, trying to maybe start and get into the high school baseball scene or high school athletic scene. So you have Cade. You say he's kind of playing all the sports right now, which is great. So my question is, maybe if we can speak to your mentality in regards to his baseball athletic development, and how you're trying to manage that now, having gone through that with Nate and Jake, and then obviously with Kate as well.
So Cade, where he's the baby, he gets, like I said, he gets the wisdom, right? We've learned what not to do with the rest of them. So with Cade, what I have him doing right now is he plays on a comp baseball team, just a local team. We're not trying to, get him to Florida or California, and we're not trying to get him everywhere or all at once to have that exposure. But what I'm really trying to do is get him to love the game. I think that's vitally important for that 12 to 16-year-old range is love it, because it's going to take a lot of grit and a lot of determination to play, post high school baseball, if that's what you want to do. And even in high school, it's going to take a lot of grit. So first, you got to love the game. And I think next with Cade, the thing that we do is we try to give him opportunities. He plays first base. He swings a heavy bat, kills baseballs, and then we give him some opportunity to pitch. I've been way more cautious with his arm than I was with Nate's. I thought with Nate's, hey, we need to throw him as often as we can. We need to win everything that we can, and he needs to be able to feel that. With Cade, it's more of, hey, let's put a little bit different matrix together for you, and maybe some of that's just, hey, how does that ball feel when it leaves your hand? How many first pitch strikes did we get? How many strikes versus balls did we get? It's just a totally different mindset with him than it is. And most of it's based around having fun right now. As he grows and matures, as he turns maybe 16, 17, then we'll start looking for an opportunity to play as good a competition as we can. And whether that's in, I live in Tremont in Utah, maybe that's in Ogden, maybe that's in Salt Lake, maybe that's in California or Las Vegas. You know what I mean? We try to find the best competition we can, and then help him, develop an opportunity to play with folks that are going to bring the best out in him. And then the other thing that we do is we work with you. That's one of the things that I think is probably as important as anything else, maybe even playing, is you've got to be able to develop those muscles to be able to do what you want them to do, and you've got to be able to do that, and to do that you've got to, it's not just haphazard plan. You got to put something together that has meaning, that has purpose, and that's going to do the things that it's intended to do for your body. So that's Cade. And then enjoy it. I guess I should include that too, right? I mean, this is fun. This is a lot of good times. He and I spend time in a car, in a vehicle, back and forth. Kate and I spend probably 3 to 4 hours a week in a car, going to pitching lessons and doing things. Those are times that I value or relish as a dad. I get to spend, people laugh at me and say, how much do you spend on pitching lessons? And I said, who cares? I get 4 hours a week alone with my little girl that we talk about whatever. What's that worth? What would I pay to have that? And I get to do that by, I get some bruised shins and messed up thumb every now and again from, catching a 65, 64 mile an hour fastball from her. But those are times that I'll have forever. I have those with Cade. I've had those with Nate and Jake and my little girl. So it's been awesome.
I think that's a really great perspective from a parent standpoint. Is a lot of times I feel like when I have conversations with parents, they're looking for the answers of how to get their kid to the next level and whatever they need to do. And most of the parents I talk to seem to have a good idea of, hey, I want to make sure my kid still loves this game and wants to play it, whatever that sport is. But from a parent perspective, I think what you just said is gold. And the time spent, memories made, and just the relationship building that is there. This is part of their process of growing up, and as a dad and as a parent, I think those times are just invaluable, like you said. And so I think that advice of just enjoying the moment and realizing that those are opportunities for your relationship with your kid to grow and be there. And I think that's probably one of the bigger takeaways that I'll take away from this, being a dad myself. So, all right, you alluded to where you're from in Tremont, in Utah. And those that don't know, it's a pretty small town. So your kids grew up in a small town. Do you feel like that was a good thing for their athletic development, or did it make things more difficult?
Let me answer that with the definitive yes, Mike. Both of those things. In reflecting on that, I kind of look at it as a double-edged sword. It was great in the fact that, like I talked earlier, is there was a need for them to play on a football team. There was a need for them to play on a basketball team and a baseball team, and they were needed and wanted and developed, and they got opportunities. In a bigger high school, maybe a 5, 6A high school, you get more kids that are specialized, and it's harder to make a basketball team, or it's harder to have a slot on a football team. So in that realm, it was really, really good. but when you look at some of the things with a small town, and I grew up in a small town, my wife grew up in a small town. We wanted to raise our children in a smaller town, and we did that. And smaller towns are tough because everybody knows everybody and everybody knows everybody's business. And so sometimes it makes it easy for people to poke holes at maybe at what you're doing or what you're about. It's also there's a little bit of animosity geared towards maybe a younger kid, because you look at someone like Cade, and maybe I don't want Cade on my baseball team because his brother's a professional baseball player, and now I'm going to have little Johnny here going to have to compete against Cade, whose brother's a pro baseball player. Maybe we'll let Cade go play on another team, and we'll move around that. You have people that have legacies that are in town, and they want those legacies to live forever, and so they don't want somebody to steal their thunder. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff. It's hard. I know, like with Kate, we get the other day we were over in Cache Valley, and we had one of the coaches that was over there. We know her. We call the pitching machine that we turn up to 65 miles an hour during the week when we're going to play Bear River. We call it Kate, right? And there's a lot of people that are like trying to poke at them and work at them. And I don't know that it's any different, in Salt Lake than it is here, but there are some things that are tough. And the way I look at it is I was watching an interview of John McEnroe with Joe Buck on DirecTV a few years ago, when DirecTV was still kind of a thing, right? And one of the things that he said, which I thought was really, really cool, is he says everybody loves success, but they all hate successful people. And I think part of a job as a parent when your kids have success is they've got to understand is that that's the way people work. We're unfortunately, we're kind of like a crab pot, and there's those that are on the bottom trying to reach up and grab those crabs above you and pull them down. And so you've got to teach your kids the mentality of, hey, look, people are going to poke at you. People are going to try to push you. You're not going to make a local team because, hey, you're better than little Johnny. So, you got to be okay with what you are and what you're about, and then just go do your thing. And as you do your thing, know that what you are and what you give is good enough, and it's enough for us, right? And then be successful. Just be successful. I tell Cade all the time. I mean, that kid, again, he's playing on a 13U baseball team. He's got a brother that plays pro baseball. He's got another brother that plays Division I baseball. He's going to have some opportunities here as soon as he's done. He's got a sister going to, BYU. Think of the pressure that's on that little dude, right? And I keep trying to tell him all the time. I'm like, look, it doesn't matter what you do. Just go out and work your hardest and be the best Cade you can be. And that's enough. That's good enough. My love is not predicated on whether or not you get a D1 scholarship, but my love's predicated on the fact that you're my kid, and that you and I are learning lessons together. And that lesson is turn in your best work, right? Develop that grit. Do the things that are going to make you successful, and you'll be successful at whatever life throws at us. So.
Well, and I can attest to just watching you interact with your kids. Obviously, I spent a lot of time with you and your family, and just watching you interact both with Nate and then also interact with Jake and Kate. You treat each one differently. You talk to each one differently, but I feel like the format and the matrix and everything that you talk about is the same. And it's exactly what you just said. We might have to call that the Scott Dahle winning formula for youth and athletic success or something, because you basically ask every one of your kids in their own particular way, hey, turn in your best work. And each kid responds to that and has done that. And I think with Cade, I think there is a unique challenge with Cade, and for himself being the youngest of four kids, but a youngest of we got three really good athletes that have gone ahead of him and have proven their success at different levels. And so I think with him, I think you've managed him well. I think he's up and coming, and it's a tribute to what you've done. But I think what you just said, again, I think is gold. Much of what you've already said throughout this whole interview, and that framework that you just talked about of challenging your kids to do really well, making sure that they put forth their good effort and try to just turn in their best work, like you said, I think is really probably a testament to why your kids are successful and will be successful in anything they do. If anybody gets a chance to meet your kids, you know they're not going to just be successful athletes. They're good people. I mean, I could tell at least one story of Nate, stopping to talk to kids that just saw him walking around. He went over and he started a conversation and just talked to him like, player to player, and he made those kids feel like $1 million. And Jake's the exact same way. He's got a personality that I don't think anybody can not like, and I think that's a tribute to you and Heather and everything that he's done and you guys have done with them. So let me shift gears a little bit. We've talked a little bit about baseball and obviously talked about Kate a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit more about softball. So coming from someone who's navigated both, and what would you say is the biggest difference between youth baseball and youth softball in regards to being a parent?
Oh, the cheers out of the dugout are probably the biggest thing, Mike. No, it's kind of funny because with softball, it's one of those things that, man, girls trade teams like a lot of us trade socks. I mean, they're bouncing around between team to team to team to team all the time. But I think Heather was largely responsible for the huge success of Kate in softball. I mean, Heather was absolutely instrumental when Kate was little. She started a little. I think they were 6 or 7, maybe 8, 7 or 8 years old. She started a little team, and they went to Soda Springs and started. They bounced around, all over the Mountain West here, going, and then she moved her from that team to a different team to a different team. And I think the thing with girls softball is with it being faster and the availability of pitching and those kinds of things. It's just, there's so much out there that's boom 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 boom. And so, in my mind, the formula for success is one, like we've talked about, turn in your best work. But I think the other thing too is as you grow, learn. As you start moving from team to team, as you start going up from 10U to 12U, learn. Associate with people like yourself. Janet's been a heaven sent to us as well. To learn who the right people are to help us learn how to do what we do. Pitching wise or those kinds of things wise, they've been huge and instrumental in what we do. So I don't know if I answered that well enough, but really that's the big key to me is there is some differences. It's just being at the right place at the right time with the right people, and a lot of that is just put yourself out there and talk to folks as you go. So
a little bit more specific than in a question. How did you know when to switch teams with Kate? Are there certain things you looked for, certain things you were trying to improve with Kate?
It was opportunity. With her, it was just opportunity. As she got better pitching wise, she needed to be able to have access to better competition. So as she grew, we just kept moving her. I will give a huge shout out to USA Athletics. Mike Embry was a gigantic, heaven sent in our family. Got us down with Rose down there in California. They helped, promote her, put her around, and one of the things that they did was they put her in front of, great competition with good coaches. Last summer we were in front of NC State, we were in front of Utah State, BYU. I mean, everybody was there, and they just really helped push and promote her and get her in front of people. But we played great competition, and that was the big thing. I remember the NC State coach saying that we've watched this Tennessee Mojo team a million times. We've never seen a little girl hold them to 2 runs like you did, and they were super impressed. And I think that's the biggest piece again, is just having those opportunities, being at the right places, and again, turning in your best work.
So how did you as a parent find USA Athletics? Did you do anything specific to seek them out? It just happened to just talk to enough people and it became exposed. How did you do that?
Well, we played with a lot of different, and I hope I don't leave anybody out or upset or offend anybody, but we played with the UFC out of Utah Fast Pitch right down here in Slick. We played with just a lot of different people. UFC had a pitcher that's now pitching at BYU on their roster, and she was getting the opportunities with that bigger team. So we just kind of maneuvered around until we found the right fit for Kate to where she could get the right opportunities in those same big tournaments and those same big games that those other girls were getting. And so I think the big thing there is don't take offense when you move teams. Just find where you fit with your little girl and where she has those opportunities to make those inroads and be successful for herself, and have those chances. So
Awesome. So another question. So did any of your kids, and I've never asked them this question either, I'd be curious their answers, but did any of your kids at any point come to you and be like, hey, Dad, I'm sick of baseball. I'm sick of softball. And if they did come to you, did that, what was your answer?
well, let's ask Kate. Let's ask Kate right here. She just happened
Oh, okay.
to get the quick cameo. Come here. Was there ever a time when you were sick of softball or wanted to break or wanted to quit?
I would say no, not really. I mean, there's some days where it gets hard, but never that I wanted to quit. So
Gotta hold still.
All right. That's
Well,
good.
and I would say there's times when we'll be at a diamond or we'll get frustrated or a curveball won't work or something like that won't happen, and there's times when we get frustrated. But I've never had a kid say, you know what, I hate this. This is terrible. I can't stand what we're doing. I'm done. With any sport, with football, with baseball or basketball, or those kinds of things. But but that also might be, Mike, that's another one of those quick life lessons is we don't quit, right? It's a you've given up 7 runs and we've got one out and we can't get an out and that shortstop keeps booting the ball. Sorry, we're not quitting. We're going to shoot him another ground ball. You know what I mean? That's the way we work. And so hey, I think with each of the kids, they've thoroughly enjoyed the process of getting where they were, and I think they thoroughly enjoy the game. And so it's never been a, hey, Dad, I'm done. Even Jake now, I've noticed a little bit. I mean, it's the 10th of May. I think he's got 2 or 3 series left in his collegiate career. He might have another year of eligibility, but realistically, he's played his college career. I can feel it inside of him, and we haven't talked specifically about it, but I think it's a little apprehensive for him to think what's on the other side of not playing baseball. So they don't want that ride to end.
Yeah, that's a tough road to go. A lot of those that have experienced it, it's definitely a change in everything So that I think that's probably a good. Maybe we'll have this another interview after all your kids are done and ask you how you navigated that. But let's talk a little bit more specifically. You've just recently with Kate went through the college recruiting process and obviously did that as well with Nate and Jake. And so what would be a few, 1 or 2 tips that you could give to parents that are in that process where maybe they have a junior or sophomore, junior, senior that's getting some interest from colleges, or maybe not getting a lot of interest, and maybe some things that you can help them kind of there's key takeaways that you have in your mind from the college recruiting process with your kids?
The one thing that I would say, well, there's a bunch of things I would say, but for sure, what I would say is go where you're wanted. That's the first and foremost thing I would say is go where you are wanted. And with that, what I would do is I would definitely do my homework. I would find out where you're at and where you want to be, and then chase that. I know, like with Nate and Jake, they have a fantastic relationship with the pitching coach at College of Southern Idaho. Great guy, great opportunities, huge teacher, taught them wonderful, wonderful things. So many kids get caught up of, well, I'm good. I have to go play D1 right out of school. Well, that's great. Jake's 24, Nate was 23, right? If you want to be an 18-year-old kid and see a 100-mile-an-hour fastball right out of high school, good luck with that. That's not easy to do, right? So my personal opinion is don't be ashamed to go to a junior college. Don't be ashamed to go to a no-name junior college. Take advantage of the situations that are played in front of you, and go where you're wanted, and go where you're going to play. And I think that's the most important thing, because you don't get better as a person and you get better as a player unless you play. So go somewhere where you're going to be needed and wanted, and go somewhere where you're going to have an opportunity to either swing the bat or throw the ball. And don't focus so much on, hey, I got to get to UCLA, because there's not enough spots in UCLA for everybody to get to. So go play. Just go play.
Yeah, I definitely feel like, especially in the environment we have now with the transfer portal and those guys that can kind of just jump around to different teams, I think that's really good advice. And there's something to be said about if you're coming from a program where, yeah, on average you're seeing low 90s, and you're going to jump into a program where in order to play you got to be able to hit mid 90s with movement. You may not be able to play for a couple of years until you can actually do that. And I've definitely seen some success out of guys that have gone a different, just kind of a different or non-traditional route. Not that the traditional route doesn't work; it does still work. But I think you have a good point in the fact that if you're going to develop, you need reps, and you need to go somewhere where you can get reps, and where you're going to be essentially allowed to fail a little bit, and allowed to figure it out and to succeed. And it's going to take hard work, but I think that's really good advice. Any difference in the softball college recruiting process and the baseball recruiting process, or are those pretty similar?
They're similar. I think it's being at the right things. I listen with Kate. Kate had she had opportunities all over the country. I think the big thing with her was she really knows what she wants to do after school. She picked a program that had that program there, and she said, this is where I want to be. And she went to camps, she went to tournaments, everything. She made phone calls, she reached out to those guys and made sure that they knew that she wanted to be there. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think a lot of people get hung up on money or scholarships or all that. Unfortunately, with baseball, there's not a lot of scholarship money there, right? Softball, there's a little bit more because you're a Title IX sport, but you're still an Olympic sport, so you don't get a ton of money like football. Nobody gets football money. So don't get caught up on the money. Don't get caught up on the ego. Get caught up on the experience, right? Go have an experience. College is not it's not an easy thing to do, but man, I tell Nate every day, stop. You're in, like today, he's in Bowling Green, Kentucky, probably going to play this afternoon. He's got 7,000 fifth graders in a stadium. Stop. Stand on the dirt, breathe the air, look around, look at all the kids doing the YMCA around there. Enjoy that experience. Same with Jake, right? Hey, look, you're in Abilene, Texas, you're in Oregon, you're going to be in Sac State, in a week. Stop. Enjoy this, breathe this in, and enjoy what you're doing. They did the same thing when they were at CSI. They did the same thing when they were at the University of Utah. Just enjoy this experience, because it's over in a second. And so, breathe that in. But with softball, baseball, there's a lot of things that are out there. You can pay a lot of money to try to get everybody out there. I think the biggest thing you've got to be able to do is just let somebody know that, hey, look, I have interest in your school. I want to be here. Here's my skill set. If my skill set fits at your school, I want to be there. If it doesn't, find one that does. And it doesn't matter, because there's guys playing in the middle of Kansas. There's guys playing in Florida, in Idaho, all over the place. There's places out there where you can go play. You just got to find them. So
Great advice. So, all right, we're gonna shift gears even more out of the college realm. You just went through Nate being drafted by the Tampa Bay Rays. Tell me your experience with that, things you learned that maybe will be able to help you with Jake, maybe Kate in the future, even Kate to certain degrees. But tell me some of the things you took away with the process of going from collegiate baseball to professional baseball. I'll ask some more specific questions, but we'll start with that. Just tell me your overall experience and overall feelings that you had with that process.
Well, we had a number of ball clubs identify Nate pretty early. Nate's kind of a unique guy. You know him. You know, when you're 6'6", 245 to 265, depending on what you're doing, you're a commanding character on a mound. And so he's been back and forth, but he struggled a little bit early in school, and especially at BYU, that first little bit he didn't. They tried to use him as a starter, moved him as a reliever. And then, man, he just kind of blew up, and everybody was interested in him. As that process came out, the one thing that I've learned is that nobody knows anything about it except for the guys that are in those rooms calling the shots, because guys at school, folks that we talked to, whether it was a advisor or coaches, nobody knew what they were thinking or where he was going to go. We kind of had a feeling that he would go late first day, early the next day. He got a call in the 5th round, right? Had money been right in the 5th round, Nate would have been a 5th round draft pick. But Nate knew what his value was and knew what his worth was. And he told that first day, I think he told 15 ball clubs, no, he wouldn't go for the money that they offered him. Heather and I think, didn't sleep at all that night, wondering, what my kid was doing. But the next day, as day 2 came, things got, fast and furious. People were throwing money around. His phone rang constantly, and he finally, I think he had a number given to him by the Angels that the Rays were willing to work with, and so he said yes. 5 seconds later, his name was on the TV. We had, the family screaming and hollering, jumping around. We had a neighbor kid here that thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And then we were off and running, trying to find a Tampa Bay hat somewhere in Utah. And we had to hit 3 different lids and a pro image to find enough hats to be able to put hats on everybody, in the family, which was pretty fun. But since that whole thing, he's been swooped up, gone, and been part of a Rays family, and I will honestly say it's like a family. Those guys take really good care of him. But Nate's seen that it's a business. They have expectations for you. They expect you to live up to those expectations. If you don't, they move you on. I love a lot of the things that they teach. I mean, they travel a certain way, they wear clothes a certain way. They don't wear, hey, we don't wear this amount of earrings. We don't wear this amount of, your hair's cut this way, this, that, and the other. I mean, they put some stipulations together. But I think first and foremost, the thing I really, really, really love about Nate's experience that he's having right now is I'll call him and I'll say, hey, man, you guys could have won that game. What's going on? And he's like, Dad, it's not about winning and losing here. It's about developing. It's about letting guys figure out how to do what they're supposed to do. And so, you'll see a kid that can't get an out, give up 8 runs and an out. That pitching coach will go out, put his arm around him and say, hey, settle down. I got a shortstop here that makes $3 million. Shoot him a ground ball, we'll get you an out. And they go right back at it, and they're constantly teaching and instilling a game of failure to help a kid understand success or confidence in that game of failure. And so that's one thing that I've taken away from Nate's experience is that first, you are extremely, extremely blessed to get an opportunity to play baseball post-college. That's probably first and foremost. Second is inside of that blessing, enjoy every minute of it because it doesn't last long. And third is this is a game of learning and growing and take those opportunities and learn and grow as you can and just again enjoy it, because there's kids coming from Venezuela, from the Dominican Republic, from inside the United States, anywhere that a guy can be successful at baseball. They identify those kids, they bring them up, they move them through the system. And so when you get there, learn what you can learn, enjoy it, and then just run with it. But those are things that now, I've taken those things, and now I've got a 13U team that uses the Tampa Bay Rays off-season throwing program, and we use their pitching philosophies all the way through.
Nice. Oh, that's excellent. I mean, having spoke with Nate and just his progression and how he feels about how things are going, you can already see him develop even more as a player, and just his stuff's working. He's always had a really good attitude towards the game and how to play it, and I think it's only gotten so much better since he's been out in professional baseball, which is really what you're kind of hoping for with the development there with him. So staying with this. From a parent standpoint again, but one of the questions that we hear occasionally is, well, how did somebody find an agent? Did they reach out to them? Did you reach out to an agent as a dad? Did Nate reach out? Did he just know somebody and then did they send a referral? I'm curious how the whole agent process began and started and how it came to be. So if you don't mind just kind of shedding some light on that.
Happy to do it. Agent story is fantastic because I had a few people inside, the baseball family that there's a few folks. You're one of my baseball family, right? There's a couple others that are very, very close to me, but I had one person out of California call me and say, hey, you need an agent. And so I started calling. You do the Google thing and you find the Borises and the everybody that's out there, and nobody wants to touch a 24-year-old Mormon boy that's been on a mission that's had TJ, right? That you're kind of like we don't need you because they want to make money, and their job is to make money, so they go after that blue chip first round 18-year-old kid. So I tried. I probably called 15 agencies to try to get an agent for Nate, and I always got, okay, hold on, we'll find somebody. We'll get this guy to call you back, and occasionally I'd get an email back or a text back, but usually nothing really worked. Last summer we were with Kate in Denver, and she was playing in Denver, Colorado, and we were playing against a team from New York City, and the head coach of this team that was there was talking to me about Kate and was very interested in her, and so we were just talking back and forth, and he asked about, hey, does she have any siblings? What do they do? And I said, yeah, she's got a brother that's might get drafted, and this is mid-June, and the draft was soon, within a month. And he goes, well, who's his agent? And I said, oh, he doesn't have an agent. He says, well, why doesn't he have an agent? And I told him, and he says, well, hold on one second. And he grabs his phone and dials up somebody's name and says, hey, Joe, I got a guy here that needs to talk to you, and hands me his phone. And I pick up the phone, and the agent's Joe Bick, works for an agency in Cincinnati, Ohio. Anyway, long story short, this guy had played for a few years inside the Yankees organization, made it to the big leagues for, I think, 2 years, had an agent. That was his agent, called us. And anyway, long story short, he loved Nate, said, absolutely, I want to represent him. And that's how we ended up with Joe as Nate's advisor / agent. So kind of crazy, kind of a fun little story. But Kate was instrumental in getting Nate an agent.
Yeah, so a common theme I'm hearing from you in regards to from a parent in a sports standpoint with your kids is that, one, you're actively engaged. I think that's pretty apparent. But the other is that if anybody knows you and hangs out with you long enough, is you talk to everybody, and you get to know everybody, and it's not in a way that you're trying to find a way to improve your kid's athletic career. When you do it, you just like talking to people, and you just kind of meet a few people, and then they meet, they introduce you to somebody else, and that's kind of how it works. And I think from a parent standpoint, one of the better things I think parents can do for their kids in sports is really just to be there, enjoy the process while you're there, but get to know the environment that you're in. And I mean, it's not too small of a world, but it's not that big of a world either. And so somebody's going to know somebody who's had success, and just not be afraid to ask questions. And I think the community itself is willing to open up and help anybody, because you're all in the same boat. I mean, everybody's trying to help their kids at that point, and I don't think there's any advantage or disadvantage of not, maybe sharing some information and letting certain things happen. And so I think that's kind of an it's not been said yet, but I think in regards to your success with your kids, and Heather's the same, is that you guys are vocal, you talk to people, you're outgoing, you're willing to meet new people and just discuss and help other people, and in turn you're being helped yourself, and that is also reflected in your kids as well. I think every one of your kids, I don't, Cade and I haven't spent enormous amounts of time together yet, but the other three are all the same way. They're outgoing, they're willing to help and just be a part of a team, and so I think that's something maybe we can take away from this a little bit if you're a parent listening, and that is just be involved and be willing to chat and talk to other people, and know that there's avenues to get things done, and that there are people out there willing to help you. So, but yeah, I actually never heard the agent, how you found the agent story, other than we found an agent. I didn't realize Kate was so involved in that. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again,
and he does, he represents TV personalities. So sooner or later, it's, he's going to be her agent as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Kate's going to be a moving up that ladder pretty quick, depending on, when she gets through the softball side of it. So, well, Scott, I really appreciate the time you've taken and the insight you've given to us here on this podcast. So I'm gonna put you just a little bit on the spot, no pressure really, even though you handle pressure better than anybody else I've seen so far. And that is, so say you're called up to the front of the room, you didn't know you were going to, but you've got 5 minutes, and you've got to give the main punchline between, hey, how do I make my kids successful in sports? If you don't mind answering that question, and if you can do it in the fewest amount of sentences possible.
Well, I'll tell you, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to call Mike. That's the very first thing you're going to do, because I mean that in all sincerity. I tell Mike, you can be you can honestly attribute this, or at least vouch for me. Everybody I talk to, I tell them, listen, if you want to be able to get better at throwing, if you want to be able to do whatever, go see Mike. I've asked Mike to get me a shirt that says, if you want your kid to throw 100 miles an hour, ask Mike. But in all reality, the one thing that I would do is I would call Mike first, and I would get a plan together of how to get my body right. And I think in your very first podcast that you put together, you have point A, point B. And I think both of those are vitally important. So the 5-minute punchline, Mike, is you need on your whiteboard or your wall or your mirror or whatever, your point B. And if my point B is to be at BYU, or it's to be at, CSI, or it's to make the varsity baseball team, put that on your mirror. That's your point B. Now, where am I right now? Where is point A, right? And what do I have to do to get from A to B? And that is, one, I've got to put a plan together. That's where Mike's important. And then two, I got to get up every day and I got to go to work. I got to put my boots on. I got to sweat. I'm going to get dirty. There is grit that's involved in this process. And so as a mom or as a dad, you have to be able to let little Johnny get scraped knees. You got to let little Johnny, go through some pain and some suffering and hurt a little bit and be sore. And you got to be able to pat him on the back, and say, hey, look, you'll be all right. Rub some dirt on it, we'll get through this. There's some icy hot over there or whatever it is. Get a Mark Pro, do what you got to do, but you're going to be all right. And help them, be instrumental in helping them get to that point B, because everybody's got a point B and we're all at point A. So work, and you'll get there. And I that plays with college sports, that plays with life. That's everything. I probably, Mike, I got to do one thing, and I've got to get Jake a shout out, because Jake graduated last Friday from Utah Tech. I believe he has a 3.4 GPA, and he played baseball the entire time of his college career. That's almost unheard of, to do it in the right amount of time and to have that kind of a thing. But that's due to the fact that Jake did that formula. He knows point B and he knows point A, and he works to close the gap between the two. So if you want your kid to play college baseball or high school baseball, call Mike right now because he'll help him. He'll help him get to point B.
Well, I thank you for that. And I did not tell you to say that. And I can definitely attest that your kids work hard. Obviously I had them with me for a long time. Kind of rehab both of your older kids, but they all work hard, and I think that's actually a really good formula for success as a parent. I think your advice as a parent again, I think it's just golden. It's allowing them to feel the work and the strain and those kind of things, but then being there to encourage them to grow and to develop and to give them a nice outside perspective of where they're at. So when they're really suffering and wondering if this is worth it, you come in, you and Heather have come in with your kids especially, and just said, hey, look, yep, it's worth it. Stay the course. You're almost there. And it just, as a parent, those things are invaluable to be able to do that. So, well, Scott, this has been amazing. I really appreciate the time and taking the time to answer my questions and go through this. And I'm sure you and I will talk quite a bit, and we may have to do this podcast again once Cade's gone through his whole thing, and then you can give me the answers to what do you do with your kids once they are done playing, and then we can kind of see where Cade's story ends up too. And but yeah, we'll have to do this again. This is fun.
Mike, thanks for your time and thanks for all you do, and wish you the best. And if anybody's got questions or anything like that, please get with Mike, and I'm happy to help you any way that I can.
All right. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
Yep.